She walked right past me with two champagne flutes in her hand, and neither of them was for me. I was standing 3 feet away, not behind a wall, not in a crowd, just there, existing, in her line of sight. And yet somehow, she made eye contact with me and still didn't see me. You ever experienced that? Being acknowledged and erased in the same second? One of the glasses went to a guy with bleached hair and those expensive European loafers with no socks. The other, she sipped herself, still laughing at whatever unfunny thing he'd said. I remember thinking, this is how it begins. Or maybe this is how it ends. The DJ switched to something synthy and low, the kind of song that makes you feel like you're in a movie, even when you're just having a breakdown in a room full of strangers. I slid sideways to a wall and stared at the cake table. Her name was printed in gold frosting. No mention of me. No hint of us. Just congrats, Jen. And a million tiny edible stars. That's when I noticed the slideshow on the wall. It was looping photos of her at work, laughing at conferences, high-fiving teammates, accepting some fake-looking acrylic award. And in every picture, she looked like she belonged to someone else's life. One where I didn't exist. She had a life outside of me. That much I knew. But in that moment, I realized, maybe I was the outside life. I didn't even make the slideshow. Not one photo. Not even the vacation shot I took of her in Lisbon she once called her favorite. Just cropped out memories and curated smiles. You'd think she was single. You'd think she was someone else's everything. I was about to walk out. Not storm, not make a scene, just leave like a gentle ghost, when she leaned in and kissed the cheek of that sockless bastard. He didn't flinch. Like it was normal. Like it was familiar. That was the moment I stopped pretending I mattered. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't text her I was leaving. I didn't even look back. Instead, I walked down 6 flights of stairs, called a cab I couldn't afford, and opened the Notes app on my phone. Because something inside me had finally snapped, and I needed to write it all down before I let myself forget how deep that sting really went. And you, whoever you are, reading this, you need to hear what happened next. Because the party wasn't the worst part. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed fully dressed, staring at the crack in the ceiling, the one she used to say looked like a lightning bolt. She hadn't come home yet. Or maybe she had. At some point, I stopped checking the door. Around 4 a.m., I got up and paced like a lunatic, then grabbed the laundry basket just to look busy. That's when I found her old laptop, the one she claimed was broken months ago. It was tucked beneath a pile of sweaters in the hallway closet. I don't know what made me plug it in. Curiosity, maybe. Desperation, more likely. When it lit up, I just stared. No password. She never locked this one. It was like the universe had finally tossed me a bone, saying, "You really want to know? Here, look." I clicked through files aimlessly until I found a folder called Conference_Italy. It was dated 6 months ago, back when she said the hotel Wi-Fi was too spotty for FaceTime. I remember how that excuse felt then. Hollow, but not worth arguing over. I opened the folder. There were pictures, lots of them. Geneva on balconies, in restaurants, smiling in candlelight. But not alone. Always with him. The same guy from the party. Same smug smile. Same careless hands brushing her shoulder or lower back. In one, he had his arm around her waist while she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. And what shattered me wasn't the physical closeness. It was her face. She looked weightless. Free. Like he was the escape, and I was the cage. One video had them toasting champagne in bathrobes. The timestamp said 2:13 a.m. She'd told me she was asleep by 10. In that moment, my knees went weak. I actually laughed, not out of humor, but in that sad, broken way where your body can't decide whether to scream or collapse. I wanted to shut the laptop. I wanted to throw it. Instead, I watched. I watched it all, like a man pressing on a bruise just to confirm it still hurts. The worst part? There was no guilt in her eyes. Just joy. Unfiltered, radiant joy. And I sat there, in the hallway with laundry spilling around me, realizing I had been grieving a marriage that died long before that party. I just hadn't gotten the memo. Yet somehow, I wasn't angry. I was empty. And that's even worse. Because when anger fades, you're just left with the truth. And the truth is, I had become invisible in my own life. And maybe she was never really mine to begin with. She walked in just after noon the next day. Sunglasses still on. Jacket folded neatly over her arm. She looked polished. like someone who hadn't just spent the night forgetting her husband existed. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the laptop in front of me. Its screen turned black from inactivity, but my mind had been replaying those images all morning. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. She hung her jacket with surgical precision, opened the fridge, poured herself orange juice, and only then did she glance in my direction. "You're up early," she said. Not a question, not a greeting. Just static between two people who shared walls, but not lives. I wanted to ask everything at once. Who he was, how long it had been, if she even thought about me while she was pressed against him on balconies in Rome or Florence or wherever she pretended to be alone. But instead, I asked, "Did you have fun last night?" She paused, smiled like I was a stranger asking about the weather. "It was fine. Work people. You know." Then she added, "You left kind of early." My knuckles went white around the coffee mug. "You didn't notice." She didn't blink. I did. That was it. No apology. No explanation. She noticed and chose not to do anything. Do you understand how much that stings? It's one thing to be forgotten. It's another to be remembered and discarded anyway. I thought maybe she'd lie, or cry, or spin something clever. She didn't. She sipped her juice and walked out of the room. And that's when I realized this wasn't a secret affair anymore. This was indifference. Cold, quiet indifference. The kind that doesn't need yelling or cheating or text messages to be betrayal. I opened the laptop again after she went upstairs. This time, I looked beyond the photos. I dug deeper. Into her messages. Into the cloud backups she didn't know still synced to that old machine. And what I found wasn't what I expected. There were no steamy confessions. No, "I love you" texts. What I found was worse. It was plans. Plans to leave. Plans to replace me. Plans to upgrade her life. As if I was the old model, slowing her down. My name came up twice. Once in reference to the lease. Once in a message to a friend that read, "He's just not ambitious." I can't respect that anymore. That's what I had become to her. A dead ambition. Something to be pitted, then deleted. I sat there for hours, rereading that one sentence, letting it gut me slowly. And somewhere around sunset, I made a decision. Not to confront her. Not to scream. But to disappear. Quietly, completely, and in a way she wouldn't see coming. I didn't pack a suitcase. That would have felt too final, too dramatic, the kind of move that begs for attention. I didn't want her attention anymore. I wanted distance. Clean, surgical, invisible distance. So I started removing myself in pieces. First, I deactivated the shared Spotify account. She wouldn't notice that for a few days, maybe not at all. Then I quietly stopped syncing my photos to our cloud drive. Changed passwords she forgot she even had access to. I wasn't trying to hurt her. Not yet. I just wanted to watch how long it would take before she realized I was ghosting out of her life. Like I said, no suitcase. Just subtle subtractions. I canceled the meal delivery subscription, the one I paid for every Thursday, the one she always assumed came from her company perks. I deleted my name from the autofill forms on her browser. I logged into our Amazon account and turned off the notifications. I wanted to vanish like vapor. No storm, no thunder. Just gone. But it wasn't just the digital stuff. I started rehearsing my silence in real life. At dinner, I let her speak without answering. When she talked about work, I nodded in the right places. But I never asked follow-ups. I never touched her. Not out of punishment. It just didn't feel natural anymore. She was a performance I'd already seen too many times. The spark was gone. I wasn't angry. I was numb. Which is worse. Because anger can burn out. Numbness grows roots. She didn't ask why I was sleeping on the couch again. She didn't ask why I was suddenly taking my walks after midnight. She didn't ask why the lights in the guest room were on when she came home late. I think she liked the distance. I think she mistook it for peace. But peace wasn't what I was building. I was collecting puzzle pieces. Because there were still things that didn't add up. Receipts, messages, overlaps and timelines that she clearly thought I was too dull to notice. I wasn't. I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. But now I did. Fully. And the truth was, her affair had started long before Italy. It had fingerprints in Chicago, Boston, even a weekend in Austin she swore was just a team retreat. So I started digging deeper. I combed through backup logs, metadata from photos, synced locations from her smartwatch that she didn't know synced to my account, too. And what I found him. Not just in the photos. In the bookings. In the Uber rides. In the hotel rewards points she stupidly linked to her shared Gmail. He wasn't just some guy she flirted with over drinks. He was part of her routine, her new orbit. And the worst part? He wasn't better than me. Not richer. Not smarter. Not kinder. Just newer. Shinier. Hungrier. That's when something in me cracked. Not in a rage way. In a planning way. Because if I was going to leave, I wasn't just walking away. I was taking something with me. I started by learning her schedule better than she knew it herself. Not to stalk her, but to map the exact holes where my life could disappear without her noticing. She had yoga on Tuesdays, wine nights on Thursdays, and these mysterious late client calls that always happened on the last Friday of the month. I built my exits around those. In the evenings, while she was distracted scrolling through her phone or talking to her project team, I sat in the guest room with a legal pad, making lists of everything that was still technically mine. The joint savings, the car title, the spare keys to her storage unit, even the streaming royalties from a tiny hobby blog I'd built years ago that she didn't even remember existed. Piece by piece, I began transferring accounts, moving small amounts of cash into a new bank under my name only, setting up mail forwarding from our shared P.O. box to a co-worker's address she'd never heard of. None of it illegal, none of it dramatic, but every detail was a thread I was quietly unspooling from the tapestry of us. The strange thing was how liberating it felt. For years I'd been her echo, her safe bet, her built-in alibi, and now, by simply reclaiming what was already mine, I felt my shape returning. My posture changed. My voice changed. Even my boss noticed at work and asked if I'd taken up running. I hadn't. My pulse was just finally my own again. All the while, she seemed oblivious. She was living her shiny double life while assuming I was still in the shadows waiting for crumbs of attention. The truth was, I was building my exit door and, at the same time, assembling evidence. Nothing salacious, nothing that would humiliate her online, but enough to protect myself if she tried to spin a story about me later. Copies of emails, screenshots of hotel receipts, backup of her own messages in her own words. It wasn't revenge porn. It wasn't blackmail. It was my safety net, my proof of reality. And then came the moment I hadn't planned for. An envelope addressed to her, but delivered to me by mistake. Inside was an invitation, a sleek, expensive card to a private celebration at a hotel downtown. The same weekend she'd told me she'd be in Denver for a training. The guest list printed on the back read like a who's who of her company's upper tier. But one name jumped off the page, his sockless loafers guy, listed as consultant under a fake LLC. She wasn't just having an affair. She was integrating him into her career, building a new power couple while she slowly erased me from her life. That envelope changed everything. I stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling like a witness. A witness with a front row seat to the show they thought was private. I didn't smash anything. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront her. I simply smiled when she told me she had to catch an early flight and offered to drive her to the airport. Because by then my plan was simple and quiet. Let her believe she was winning. Let her walk straight into the future she'd built for herself. And when she looked back expecting me to still be standing there like a prop, I'd be gone. Not broke. Not broken. Not erased. Gone on my own terms, holding every piece of my life she assumed I'd leave behind. And as I closed the envelope and slid it into my jacket pocket, I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just an exit. This was a rebirth, and she had no idea she was about to watch it happen. She left for her business trip on a Friday morning, suitcase in one hand, designer sunglasses on, wheeling that ridiculously loud roller bag down the driveway like she was off to Cannes. I kissed her cheek. She barely turned her head. The Uber pulled up, and she didn't even look back at the house. And that was the last time she ever saw me as hers. Because the moment her ride turned the corner, I got to work. I already had a storage unit under a fake name rented 15 minutes away. Inside were 3 black duffel bags packed with the essentials I'd quietly collected. Documents, flash drives, my old journals, a hard drive full of backups, even some cash I'd siphoned over time from my own forgotten savings. It wasn't theft. It was recovery. I left behind furniture, clothes, books, every photo of us, especially the wedding ones. She could keep the curated fantasy. I was done living inside it. But I didn't just vanish. That would have been too easy. I wanted her to notice the space I left behind. To feel it. I unplugged the router on my way out. Not to destroy anything. just to leave silence where the house usually buzzed. I turned off every light, drew every blind, and left her favorite mug, the one I gave her on our 3rd anniversary with the chipped corner she said she loved, sitting in the middle of the kitchen table. Empty, cold, waiting. She didn't text that night. She must have assumed I was out, maybe sulking or watching old movies alone. I wasn't. I was in a small Airbnb 2 towns over, eating takeout and watching the security cams I'd installed months ago when I still hoped to fix us. That's how I saw it. That first flicker of confusion in her face when she walked in Saturday night, heels in one hand, phone in the other, expecting the usual, me on the couch, soft apology in my eyes. Instead, she stepped into a house that looked abandoned. She froze in the hallway, called my name once, twice, then louder. I didn't answer. She wandered room to room, opened drawers, sat on the edge of the bed, checked the garage. I could tell when it hit her that this wasn't a stunt, that I was gone. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat in the living room and stared at the wall. And for once, she looked small. The next morning, I blocked her number. I didn't post anything. I didn't write cryptic messages on social media. I didn't message her friends or family. I became digital dust, the kind you can't track because it was never meant to be found. And still she emailed. At first it was casual. Hey, are you okay? Where are you? Then came the confusion. Did something happen? Then the concern. You're scaring me. And finally, the crack I had waited for, the panic. Please come home. I didn't mean for things to go like this. We can talk. But I didn't respond. Because it wasn't about punishment. It was about preservation. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit inside her life. Now I was expanding in the silence. Every unread message she sent was a reminder that for the first time in forever, she didn't know what I was thinking. And that terrified her. I wasn't hiding from her. Not in the way she assumed. I didn't vanish into some off-grid wilderness or fake my own death. I was very much alive, just inaccessible. And for someone like Geneva, who had spent her life fine-tuning the art of control, that was more terrifying than any confrontation I could have staged. For weeks, I ignored her messages. They ranged from robotic professionalism to desperate confessions. She stopped saying my name and started calling me babe, again, as if she could rewind the dynamic by editing her tone. But the damage was already etched into the walls of our old house, into the receipts she thought I never saw, into the photos with the timestamps I'll never forget. And yet still, she thought I'd come running back the second she acted like she cared. She was wrong. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, a full 24 days after I disappeared, when she showed up at my office. I don't even know how she found it. I had changed jobs 3 months prior, taken a lower title for better mental health and a quieter life, something she mocked at the time. So you're just giving up your potential? She'd said. Funny how now, it was that very step downward that let me slip out from under her radar. I was in a meeting when she entered the lobby. My coworker texted, "Hey, there's a woman here asking for you. She says it's urgent. Should I let her in?" I didn't respond. I let her wait. 20 minutes. Then 40. I finished my meeting, ate a granola bar, and only then walked out, slowly, deliberately. And when she saw me, I knew immediately. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. Afraid that maybe I wasn't broken. Afraid that maybe I liked life without her. "Eli," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "What are you doing?" I stared at her, silent. Not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to give her. She had burned through my patience, my love, my trust, and now she stood in front of me holding nothing but panic dressed as regret. "I just want to talk," she said. Face to face. I motioned toward the bench outside. We sat in silence for a while. I watched cars pass. She watched me. Finally, she asked the question that must have been boiling in her for weeks. "Why didn't you say anything? Why'd you just leave?" And I gave her the answer she never expected. "Because I wanted you to see what silence feels like." She blinked. That answer didn't compute in her world, a world where everything could be talked through, reworded, rebranded. But this wasn't a PR disaster she could fix with a well-crafted apology. "You could have told me you were hurting," she tried again. "We could have worked on things." I almost laughed. "You knew I was hurting. You just stopped caring." She opened her mouth to argue, but closed it. That pause. That was the truth trying to surface, finally. "I miss you," she whispered. I shook my head. "You miss the version of me that tolerated being ignored. That version doesn't exist anymore." She didn't cry. Geneva never cried unless it served a purpose. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out something small, the chipped mug. The one I'd left on the table. She held it like a relic. I kept this, she said softly, like that meant something. Like it was proof she still held a piece of me. But it wasn't. Because the thing about symbols is, they only matter when the meaning is still alive. I stood up, slowly. I hope you find whatever you're really looking for, I told her. And then, for the first time since I'd met her, I turned and walked away, without needing her to follow. She sat there, on that bench outside the life I no longer lived in, holding a broken mug in one hand, and the full weight of her choices in the other. And this time, I didn't look back. I didn't go back to the office after she left. I walked instead, 3 miles without noticing my feet, past coffee shops and bus stops, and the kind of small city corners you only see when you're not in a hurry. I felt lighter with every block, like I was walking out of a heavy suit I'd been wearing for years. For the first time in months, maybe years, my mind wasn't looping the same questions. What she was doing, where she was, who she was with. It was just empty. And in that emptiness, there was space for something new. The storage unit was already cleared. The Airbnb had served its purpose. I had rented a small apartment near the river, nothing fancy, but it had tall windows and a smell of old wood that reminded me of summers as a kid. I moved in that evening with nothing but my duffel bags, my hard drives, and a mattress on the floor. I expected to feel lost. Instead, I felt relief. The next morning, sunlight hit the bare walls, and for once it didn't feel like a blank space left by someone else. It felt like a beginning. I never blocked her email. She wrote once more, not an attack, not an apology, just a single line. I hope you're okay. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, because I no longer needed her to understand. My life wasn't a statement about her anymore. It was a statement about me. I started cooking again, badly, but it was mine. I joined a small weekend class for woodworking, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I ran into old friends who thought I'd fallen off the map. I told them the truth in one sentence. I stopped living for someone else. They didn't need details. They just smiled. 2 months later, I adopted a rescue dog. A big, clumsy shepherd mix who barked at everything and loved everyone. Walking him at dawn became my therapy. Strangers would stop to pet him, and I'd end up talking to them, something I hadn't done voluntarily in years. One of those strangers was a woman who ran a local art studio. We started talking, then laughing, then meeting up for coffee. I didn't rush it. I didn't plan it. It just happened in the quiet space I'd made for myself. I still think of Geneva sometimes. Not with anger, not with longing, with neutrality. She was a chapter. She had her choices. I had mine. And for the first time, I see my reflection not as a man erased, but as a man returned. That night at her promotion party was supposed to be my humiliation. Instead, it was the turning point. The night I stopped waiting to be chosen and chose myself. And standing here now, in my little apartment full of sawdust, a happy dog at my feet, and sunlight spilling over a workbench I built with my own hands, I realized something simple and powerful. I didn't lose her. I found me.